I'm not going to waste your time with preamble, let's just get on with the video. ReZero Season 2 Episode 8 is titled The Value of Life. The episode opens with a conversation between Ram, Otto, and Subaru after the latter has been freed from the prison within the sanctuary. Ram was one of the key players in freeing Subaru from prison. Otto is a fun character, but not exactly characterized for his competence, and thus this reveal helps us buy into Subaru's prison break. Of course, all of her actions have come from Roswell's orders. Ram has never been a character that has a lot of agency. She acts to protect her master and her sister. With her sister now gone, her agency is even more hamstrung. Roswell now has far more control over Ram, him becoming her new top priority and motivator, taking that spot from Rem in episode 1 of this season. In the last episode, we witnessed the beginning of Otto's new friendship with Subaru. He is on track to becoming a character of far greater importance in Subaru's life. The moment that they shared at the end of episode 7 is a culmination of Subaru and Otto's prior experiences. When we first meet Otto, he pushes Subaru out of his cart to save himself. This action was reset with Subaru's death, and every subsequent timeline has had Subaru be a paragon in the eyes of Otto, despite many of the actions Subaru commits to in this regard being circumstantial. Subaru recently lost his closest confidant, and his first impression of Otto was not exactly a kind one, so seeing Otto appreciate and befriend Subaru after spending much more time together was able to completely 180 Subaru's expectations. This perspective from Subaru is emphasized more by how lonely he truly feels, but we'll get more into that a little bit later. These two have great chemistry in their scenes going forward because of all of these elements. They tend to bounce off of each other really well. The escape plan then begins. Otto and Ram decide to free Subaru while Emilia is completing the trial. They know that Garfield, the enforcer that captured Subaru and ensured his remaining in captivity, must attend every one of Emilia's attempts to break the barrier. He is not only one of the biggest players in the plan to free the sanctuary using Emilia, but he is also the sanctuary's protector. If the rival faction that wants the sanctuary kept as is knows that he is not there to watch over Emilia's attempt, there may be issues. It is the perfect escape plan from our trio. They can get out while they know for a fact that their biggest hurdle is currently occupied with bigger fish. Subaru then subverts this by deciding instead to go talk to Roswell, rather than leaving at this opportune moment. At this point in the story, Subaru has lost the ability to see value in any of his lives. This shift has been informed by the progression of his reactions to death. In the past, despite his knowledge of his power to return by death, he was still averse to dying. Now, he often sees death as a worthwhile outcome, even to the extent of pleading for his death in a prior episode of this season. The loss of Rem is one of the biggest reasons for this turn in his perspective, and has affected him tremendously. He has many goals, and he is now allowing numerous of his own possible deaths to facilitate that. He sees any harm to himself as preferable compared to the death and harm of those that he cares about. Not to say that each death isn't difficult, painful, and traumatic. They absolutely are. We still see Subaru struggle to take his own life even when his heart is set on resetting the current loop. Subaru is fully submerged in self-sacrifice at the drop of a hat. He is leaving himself less and less room for error as time goes on. In this moment, he's valuing the information that he can gather from Roswell over his continued existence within this loop. And with that, we cut to the opening, which is a banger, by the way. The visuals in this one are also metal as fuck. I love it. Subaru tells Roswell that he can't hide anything from him this time, to which Roswell replies that it was 3 days since they last spoke, and the current conversation doesn't seem like a miraculous return to that prior one. As the show progresses, we see that Subaru is able to allude to past timelines, but usually steers clear of anything which is too much of a giveaway. We've seen the outcomes of Return by Death being exposed to anyone other than him so far. With the line from Subaru, it can be like an innocuous comment. On the surface, he is essentially telling Subaru, that's a strange thing to say as an outcome from our previous conversation. Subtextually, it works fantastically as a clue into how much Roswell truly knows. this show improves to a very high degree from rewatches. Rosewall is very forthcoming with Subaru in this scene. Subaru asks Rosewall if Beatrice is a member of the witch's cult. In the prior episode, we saw Beatrice with a book that looks an awful lot like the gospel that was carried by Betelgeuse. Or is it Petelgeuse? Translators, for the love of God, which is it? Which was the leader of the group, which caused Subaru a vast amount of trauma and anguish last season. Subaru struggles to complete his train of thought on this question. Beatrice has been a strong ally to him all the way from back to the start of Season 1. Denouncing her is tough for him to get through, so much so that Roswell even comments on it, telling Subaru that despite his words being strong, his resolve is not as such. Roswell eases Subaru's discomfort by reassuring him that Beatrice was not in possession of the witch's gospel, but a different book that closely resembles it. The reason being is that they are both failed recreations of the same original book. Subaru has never been one to take much of this new world's history or culture to his heart. He is far more concerned about his immediate circumstances, especially taking comfort in the well-being of the people that he cares about. The story behind that book and its creation doesn't matter to him. He took what is necessary for him in this moment, and that is that Beatrice is not his enemy. But Rosewall leaves Subaru one final piece of information relating to Beatrice. He says that if he requires her aid, to tell her that he is that person. This is left unclear until a different loop takes him back to the mansion in a later episode. For now, it's all shrouded in mystery, like many aspects of this story always are. It is still unclear how and why Subaru was transported here back in episode 1. The nature of return by death remains a mystery. Rosewall's intentions are unclear. Why Amelia's past was locked away only gets explained in the latter half of this season. Puck's disappearance was abrupt, and many other details of the story remain unsolved at this point in the show. The show uses these mysteries to great effect. Every episode is an extra piece to a monstrous jigsaw puzzle. The reason why it works so well is because Subaru is right along with the audience with the vast majority of these mysteries. He learns about them as we do. We hardly ever learn something that wasn't experienced by Subaru. We are in his shoes for the runtime of the show, and it helps us buy into his journey and the mysteries that the show presents. One of the great things about the show is being able to see the seeds being planted for the answers to these questions at earlier stages of the show upon rewatches. Before Subaru leaves, he asks Rosewall one final question. He asks Rosewall if he is his enemy. Rosewall as a character had a part to play in the witch's cult's attack on the mansion, and is always mysteriously missing whenever trouble strikes Subaru and Amelia. He is supposed to be Amelia's sponsor and one of the most powerful beings in this world. The only things we really know about him is that he has a close connection to Ram and is extremely powerful. At this point in the story, we do not know enough about Rosewall as an audience to be able to figure out what type of person he truly is. As usual, we know as much as Subaru does. In any case, Rosewall asserts that he is an ally to Subaru and the rest of the residents of the mansion, which does have a feeling of unease as Rosewall has come across as antagonistic since his first appearance. It's generally unclear how much of Rosewall's dialogue is said to manipulate our cast, and how much of it is earnest. And that's it. Subaru was able to get the most important information that he wanted out of Rosewall, and thus the escape plan finally begins. Otto is to travel alone with Subaru on Patrash. Otto is the one traveling with Subaru because he is the one who would be hunting down for aiding a prisoner escape. But Ram has not only not been suspected yet, but she also has the protection from Rosewall, who has lordship over the sanctuary. Despite this, Ram is then also dragged into the escape attempt by Subaru, as she is needed to fight to defend the mansion. Subaru is trying to leave as little room for error here as possible. Their conversation on how best to flee is cut short, however, by Garth finding the three of them. A criticism that one may think of when first watching this scene is that it's very unlucky for Garfield to have found our trio right when they were about to escape. A future reveal about one of the characters aligned with Garfield may dissuade that in time, along with the element of Subaru's chat with Rosewall being what allowed Garth to have the time to find them. Ram, as the character closest to Garfield, tries to reason with him. The conversation ends abruptly with Garfield demanding a surrender, else die by his hand. For all that Garth knows, Subaru could be a member of the Witch's cult, a faction known for wiping out whole scores of people. Allowing him to leave, from Garfield's perspective, is not an option. There are too many unknown variables for Garfield to just allow Subaru to run free, and so a quick maneuver by Ram and Otto pushes Ram into battle with Garfield as Otto and Subaru escape as fast as they can on Patrash. The townsfolk that Subaru helped save appear in the forest as guiding lights, pointing to the way out. They are all on Subaru's side. Everything is looking up for our heroes, and that's when the episode takes a turn. We hear an explosion. Otto and Subaru are knocked off of the ground dragon, and they look in dismay as Garfield approaches, this time as his wild shape. We know that Frederica had something similar. It was a matter of time until we saw the beast form of the Guardian of the Sanctuary. Subaru is immediately terrified and surrenders. Without even hesitating, he puts his life on the line for everyone. Not for the sake of himself, but for the sake of Otto and the townspeople. Garfield raises his paw, and who else than Otto runs in to save Subaru's life and, in the process, loses his own. Subaru is then dragged behind the townspeople and is forced to watch as a great number of them give their lives to try to delay Garfield for even a second. They are attempting to protect Subaru, to repay him for saving their lives, which, from their perspective, was mere days ago. Subaru then once again pleads for his own death. It is a great bit of dramatic irony as many lives are lost in the aim to save the life of a man who cannot truly be killed. The reason that they sacrifice themselves is because that same ability that Subaru has allowed him to come across as a hero of the people, saving the day against all odds. They don't see the countless loops and countless deaths where Subaru failed over and over. They only experience the final successful loop where Subaru miraculously saves the day against all odds. This sort of event would weigh on anyone, even more so that Subaru is not the one that sees himself as this hero, despite many of the lives that he was able to save. He sees a stark difference between saving life and preventing death, him seeing his own actions in Season 1 as the latter, but the people keep falling. They are dropping like flies to Garfield. Subaru can only watch as his mount attempts to haul him away from the carnage, and in one last-ditch attempt, once all the people have been mowed through, also sacrifices himself for his master. In this loop, Subaru has now lost his closest confidant's sister, his budding friendship, the people he gave many of his lives to save, and his loyal dragon. This last move by Patrash was able to fling Subaru to the barrier of the sanctuary, shown by the reaction of the necklace, as we fade to a white screen. When we open again, we see it has all been for naught. Subaru wakes up in the same prison that his allies gave their lives to free him from. It is unclear how Subaru ended up in the prison, especially with the door wide open. The necklace is attached to Ekidana, who does have an investment in Subaru's perseverance. She is the late Witch of Greed, which can explain things somewhat. The last time that he had this amulet, he was also teleported to another location. In any case, here we are. Subaru has clearly not reset, it is the same loop. Upon exiting the prison, we see snow. Now a viewer's brain can wander to many things at this point. Has Subaru been asleep in the prison for a while? Is it just snowy? Or is something far more disastrous going on? The death of Amelia is often signified with ice, snow, and cold. It is honestly a fantastic way of immediately communicating to an audience that something very wrong is happening. Ignoring the light-hearted OVA, we have never seen snow in this show to mean anything good for our characters. Subaru immediately traverses the cold waste to get answers. The village is, however, empty. Completely. Not a drop of blood, not a sign of a struggle. Every house is intact and belongings have not been taken. It is like everyone just vanished. And there isn't a sign of life anywhere. Except for one cute, little, innocent white rabbit. Oh, fuck. We see Subaru's hand getting devoured by the creature. This is unfortunate for Subaru to meet this deadly creature, but surely one rabbit couldn't wipe out every person in the sanctuary. Suddenly he falls over. He is now also missing a leg, as two more of the same white rabbits appear, and a realization sets in. This is what happened to the village. Thousands of white rabbits converge on Subaru and begin to devour him in a scene that makes me unsure if I'm even okay showing this on YouTube. And like that, he's dead, and respawns at the usual checkpoint of this loop. That was the most gruesome and painful death we have ever seen Subaru experience. Many of his deaths thus far have been pretty simple, still painful enough to give him trauma, but not enough to break him mentally. This was a different beast, however, no pun intended, as Subaru immediately feels the phantom pain of getting eaten alive by 1,000 rabbits. I can't imagine what it would be like to experience one of the worst moments of pain that a person could ever endure, only to suddenly wake up and feel perfectly fine. For Subaru, it was enough to push him to the brink of breaking. The last time he was broken by events outside of his control leading to his deaths, he became a husk. That time was owing to the vast mental anguish of the events. The anguish, this time, is physical, and he exerts his mental state as such, beating his head against the floor repeatedly. However, all is not lost for Subaru. His checkpoint in this loop is currently the entrance to the witch's graveyard, and thus he is transported by Ekidana to her domain for a second time this season. The tea that Subaru drank previously, along with the nature of how this realm works, allows Subaru to arrive completely calmly as if nothing happened. She saved him from further distress and calmed his outburst. Her domain is a place, one might say, that exists between dream and reality, mind and matter. Ekidana and the other witches reside in this realm after their death and no longer have any substantial effect on the outside world. They only have control of this realm that they exist within. This area allows Subaru to, for a brief time, be free from the curses of the real world. Ekidana explains that to maintain his calm demeanor, he has to remember what takes place in this realm. I'm gonna call it the Witch's Graveyard going forward. The problem is that Ekidana has set up the Witch's Graveyard to wipe visitors' memories of it once they leave. Subaru immediately asks to be able to remember what has transpired, not only to aid his mental state, but also because he does not want to forget events that he has experienced. He wants to remember Ekidana, especially after she just saved his mind, and so he makes a deal with a witch. It's not the smartest choice, especially with how witches have been characterized in the show before Season 2, but it is an unfortunate necessity for Subaru at this point. We already have established that people matter to him far more than any of this world's history or culture, and as such it is an easy deal for him to make. After this, we get a nice moment of brevity, with Subaru able to be his usual eccentric self. The scene shifts. Subaru has had a sudden moment of realization about Ekidana's demeanor. By order of events in this new timeline, Subaru has just finished going through and overcoming a very satisfying and strong bit of character work where he was able to accept several realities about himself, his past, and his current situation. That episode is an absolute banger of storytelling too, by the way. To have that event, which Ekidana took a substantial part in, and immediately start going insane and hurting himself, is very strange from an outside observer. From Ekidana's perspective, Subaru's outburst was extremely random. She should want to know what the fuck happened. He explains this exact thing to her, that she should be experiencing the events in this linear fashion, and thus be very curious on why he flipped out. Subaru immediately concludes that Ekidana must know what happened to him. There is no other explanation that makes sense. We see flashes of previous moments in the show where Subaru tries to disclose the nature of his powers. We see the discomfort on his face, which turns to fear the moment that Ekidana asks him to test her, to see if she does indeed truly know what all has transpired. And now begins the best scene in the whole show. I shall describe the events and then I shall break down, in descending order of narrative importance, all the aspects of it that allow it to flourish. The music cuts as Subaru pushes past his fear of the words he is about to utter. I can return by death. The words slip out, with none of the prior interference from the Witch of Envy. Just like when Amelia was slain by those same words in the previous season. He looks up in shock to see Ekidana still breathing. He then describes the ability to return by death. Perhaps that will be enough to where he is punished for letting loose this secret that he has had to keep for the entirety of Season 1. Ekidana is still breathing, and she responds that she understands and has seen the events of his prior deaths. At this point, a mixture of desperation, shock, relief, and catharsis all hits Subaru at once as he begins to repeat the words over and over. Ekidana tries to calm him down and the soundtrack kicks in as Subaru breaks down and explains his prior experiences in every different way that he can. He is overcome with emotion. Ekidana once again urges him to calm down, but he just collapses, sobbing. He recounts how he has gone through so much without being able to tell a single soul. And we see several of his more painful deaths flash onto the screen to emphasize just how much Subaru has had to endure. As the music swells, Subaru just begins to break down crying uncontrollably. He is finally expressing emotion that he has been forced to bottle up for so long, and it is coming out now in a very explosively emotional scene. The voice performance is fucking phenomenal. The episode closes with Ekidana comforting him. She actively tells him to explain everything he wants to her. The music then carries over to the credits. The episode title appears on the screen, The Value of Life. So this scene is a fucking masterpiece, and let's explain why, starting with character. We will then move on to narrative impact, theme, performance, and finally, music. Return by death is one of the strongest abilities that any character could have on the surface, but the show is smart enough to understand and explore the fact that the ability to return by death is a curse. Ideas are cheap. Execution is where the value in good writing resides. Return by death is a mechanic that would see many writers crumble under the weight of crafting the consequences that this kind of ability truly entails. Death is not pleasant. It is rough, and the show understands that. It is an experience that all animals have an innate instinct to avoid. Because of Return by Death, Subaru has had to experience the deaths of his closest allies multiple times, crumbling under the horrors of those events. He is forced to relive those deaths indefinitely until he figures out a way to stop it. It endears us to him as he pushes himself into death on multiple occasions, even committing suicide at multiple points to try to reset the events. His lowest point in the show was his attempt to abandon that drive to push on and give up on finding a solution to preventing the deaths of his friends. But that is not who Subaru is. He cares for those that he saves and happily dies in multiple instances as long as everyone else is safe. We also know that he doesn't hold himself in any high regard for committing to these heroic actions. All of this compounds into very mentally and physically challenging lives that he must lead, of which would not be as much of a burden if he had someone to confide in. He is locked from mentioning to anyone that he has the ability to reset the timeline upon death. This would have started out as a problem for the writer to solve. How do you have a character who can reset time and not just have them tell everyone about this power to warn them of future events? The writer picks an easy answer. Magic. The same magic that causes his power also prevents him from telling anyone without dire consequences to himself or the one he is trying to tell. But like any good character writer, the writer understands that there is now a great opportunity to do something with this limitation from a character standpoint. And these elements can be built into the character writing of Subaru, and that is what the writer of ReZero does. The inability for Subaru to tell anyone about his powers is a vital core to his character, which enables many strong instances of character writing, conflict, and thematic throughline. Subaru is a self-loathing shut-in until he is put in situations outside of his control. He is forced to push through these situations without any ability to share his experiences. He has to put on a tough face and dredge through the muck of death as his disposition towards himself and his own lives begins to rot away. Subaru learned his lesson about bottling up emotion in episode 5 of season 1, a moment not easily forgotten for him, and so all of these elements combined create a character that is always ready to jump on the grenade. If he cannot tell anyone, then he is alone. If he is alone, then everyone's safety is up to him. Only him. At least that is what he believes as he commits to saving everyone at any cost to himself. And thus brings us to this scene. In a moment of realization, Subaru has a chance to tell someone about Return by Death. The pain of his past experiences trying to open up shows on his face as he prepares to say it. The moment that he sees that he can finally say it without consequences, he explodes. All the emotion bursts out at once. He becomes an absolute mess, and rightfully so. He's done it. He's finally had the chance to tell someone. So he tells them everything, over and over, until he can't even stand. When he falls to the ground, it is as if the audience can physically see the weight falling off of his shoulders. As he kneels, he's finally able to get more words out. He explains his pain in greater detail, detailing how isolated it is to have a great deal of pain that he cannot express no matter how badly he wants to, for fear of his own and others' lives. This explanation leads his emotional state to build back up, from the prior desperation and cathartic exasperations to more of an utter display of pure despair. He is fully sobbing, and it is fantastic to see. He needed it. Until now, he's felt so alone. Ekidana was able to fill a gigantic void that not even Emilia could fill. Moving on to narrative. This scene is big for the story going forward, Ekidana's role in the story, and it progresses Subaru's personal journey. Subaru has now gained an ally in Ekidana, the Witch of Greed. She now has leverage over him. She has something that no one else in the world can give him, and she will use that to her fullest. Subaru knows little of this world's history, but he does know that witches are bad news. It was a witch, after all, who granted him Return by Death. Subaru is now at the mercy of Ekidana's manipulation and desires. Despite appearing like a good person in the eyes of Subaru in this scene, she is still a witch. Everything with her comes at a price, and we will see that play out as the show continues. She is very tactful not to come across as having ill intent in this episode.
そんなにジロジロと見られると恥ずかしいな。
In terms of narrative impact on Subaru, touching on the character implications from earlier, he now has many paths and opportunities open to him. The greatest mystery of the story is by far the nature of Return by Death. It is a power that up until now only has the information attached to it that Subaru can gather by trial and error. We learn in the next episode the obvious first question that Subaru would ask. Is there a capped number of uses, if he truly does have infinite redos, or if he will eventually run out and die permanently? Ekidana is the most informed person on the matter that Subaru can talk to. In all fairness, she's the only one he can talk to right now. We are in a situation where both of them want knowledge from each other about Return by Death. She wants to know his thoughts and experiences, he wants to know what he can to help him decrease the risk of too much death. Thematically, this scene works fucking beautifully. The show explores themes of bottling up emotions, self-worth, giving up, loss, and suicide, to name a few. The main ones I want to tackle are the themes of bottling up emotion, self-worth, and suicide, as those are the ones that are most core to Subaru's character. The theme of bottling up emotions is in full effect with both Emilia and Subaru. Subaru has had moments of putting on a tough face before. In episode 5 of season 1, we see Subaru work himself to the bone to try to get out of a loop where he is never too sure what exactly is killing him. In a touching scene with Emilia, we see her break down his shell and allow him to feel what he is feeling. This is the first moment in the show where this is explored. It doesn't jump out at the viewer as a theme at this point though. An idea must be thoroughly explored before it can even be considered a theme. Throughout the next season and a bit, we have Subaru keeping emotions bottled up but not by choice. Return by Death exacts a heavy toll on Subaru, and the mechanic that silences him from ever revealing this power does wonders for this theme. He is forced to hold back so much that he ends up saying things that hurt people that he cares about. We have multiple instances of Subaru wanting so very desperately to tell other characters, especially Emilia, but the Witch of Envy won't allow him. A fitting title for her, eh? All of this culminates in this scene as we have the outcome of suppressing emotion. Subaru has a huge outburst that he cannot control, leaving him at the Witch of Greed's mercy. This is a thread that was thoroughly explored, and this allows it to come to a satisfying close, even if these same elements return later in the story. Subaru isn't where this theme starts and ends either. Emilia is currently having trouble with the Sanctuary's trials because she is also being suppressed. Her emotions have been locked away in fear that she cannot handle them, and the second half of this season is about her coming to terms with her past and working through those emotions that were sealed away. This theme can be safely deemed as one which is thoroughly explored. The self-worth and suicide themes tend to coincide in this show, so let's discuss them as a package deal. Subaru, at this point in the show, as previously discussed, is the most flippant with his lives as ever before. At the slightest pitfall, he will end it all to reset and try again. In surviving an encounter and saving many lives from the witch's cult, he damned his closest confidant to what is essentially death. At least, that is his perspective. In reality, the events were outside of his control, and the respawn point reset was in such a way that he could not prevent the loss anymore. His past save file was overwritten unintentionally, as it were. He will now not allow that to ever happen again with anyone else. The respawn points always seem to appear in a moment of reprieve, and thus in moments of anguish where events do not go his way, he will now make sure to end it before he allows himself another moment to breathe. Hence why he was so mad at Beatrice earlier on in the season. Giving him a break from torment for even a second could be what resets his respawn, and that would be disastrous for him at the wrong times. No matter the pain, no matter the cost, Subaru will try to reset if the perfect timeline is not achieved. This makes him come across as heroic, putting himself before everyone selflessly. In reality, the reason why he can so easily come to these decisions is because of how negatively he actually views himself. He is fine with the idea of death if it means that everyone he cares about will be alright, because he doesn't view himself as a substantial force in this world, despite this incredible power. Much of this stems from a past living in the shadow of his own father, an experience I think many men can relate to. Having great inspirational figures in your family's recent history is a definite motivator for some, but it can be a killer for others. We explore much of this in episode 4 of this season, and that episode is bloody fantastic. It gives confirmations and reasonings for Subaru's positive attitudes, overcompensating for something deeper in season 1. It fleshes out Subaru's past, and overall gives Subaru a chance in the show to grapple with a life left behind. Something many shit isekai animes, as in all of the other ones, forget about. I don't understand how the vast majority of shows in this genre forget that the characters lived a life before they were transported. It's so bizarre. Anyways, back to the theme. Given the chance for Subaru to prove his quality, he instead acts selfish, entitled, and rash, leading to his low points of season 1, ultimately reverting him back to his shell that he had before he was transported. He hates himself, and he must be pushed back into the fray by Rem at that moment. Rem is gone now, so he takes what she's asked of him to the extreme, to ensure that everyone makes it out alive. The next factor that strengthens this scene is the performance. There is very little to say here other than fuck me, is the performance fucking stellar.
は死に戻りしてたんだ。何度も死んでやり直して、俺は死に戻りを。
The voice actor for Subaru, Yusuke Kobayashi, kills it. I remember reading, but can't find the source anymore, that the emotions in the scene are 100% real and he actually sobbed in the booth during the recording. He loves Subaru and puts a lot of himself into the role, feeling emotions alongside his character. This is really felt in the scenes. What a fantastic performance. Finally, onto music. Despite being at the bottom of my list in terms of importance, music is still very important. Music serves to elevate scenes, but scenes can still be full of emotional and narrative juice without necessarily needing music. But on a more personal note, music is often required for me to have a deep emotional response to storytelling. Every scene in media that I've ever physically cried during was ones with powerful music cues, none the least of which being
I love you.
We'll show them. We will show them all.
The music which underscores this scene is fucking incredible. It is one of the best in the show, only rivaled by the obvious Requiem of Silence. Music is incredibly subjective, yes, but this track is fantastic. Not much more I can say on that here, on its objective quality, as composition and melody isn't something I'm too well versed on. I'm more of a percussion guy myself. The music also continues into the credits as we get the title of the episode, The Value of Life. Thank fuck this scene wasn't undercut by a mandated ending song. That episode, but most importantly, that scene, is bloody great. Overall, the episode gives us more progression on the world, amps up the stakes of the arc with the introduction of the Great Rabbit, and shows Subaru in the best scene that this show has to offer thus far. The episode is chock full of information, moments of brevity, genuine terror, shock, and catharsis. A true testament to the power of storytelling when done right. This episode, and the show as a whole, receives from me the best compliment I can give to any anime. It can be fucking subtle. Let's be honest. The anime medium as a whole does not know how to be subtle. In stories, a character's actions can storytell even when the writer may not want them to be. More Western media tends to use this concept to subtly storytell. An example of this concept is in this episode, when Subaru decides to talk to Rosewall once being freed. This tells us that he is fine with dying as long as he gets more information. There is a massive risk to doing this, but Subaru doesn't care at this point because of how he views his lives. All of these ideas are communicated to the audience without needing an overt explanation. In moments like these, anime tends to be overly explicit to a nauseating degree. In any other anime, we'd have an inner monologue where Subaru would say, "I know that this may kill me, but I don't care. As long as my friends are safe, I'll die. And information is what I need right now. I'll do anything to get it. I'll even die for them." Yeah, this show doesn't do this. It's far more subtle than most animes I've seen. It isn't perfect in this regard, it still has anime moments. For example, I do wish the show had less flashbacks, but compared to the vast majority of other anime, it doesn't treat you like as much of a goldfish. Or as much of a child. Honestly, for all I enjoy Persona 5, why are there so many goddamn flashbacks? Even when the scene being shown takes place literally minutes before the flashback. Look, the game really wants you to know that people think of Makoto as useless, alright? In this video, I did nothing but heap praise on the show. Does that mean it's a perfect show? God no. It has its own problems, some of them within the context of the show, some of them based on the anime tropes it sometimes pulls from. But overall, I think the show is of a fantastic quality, especially where the character writing is concerned. This episode is one of the greats, and I wanted to explore why. It is my favorite episode of the show, and I doubt that it will be matched in quality. That being said, Season 3 is on the way. I wonder what they'll do with it. It still has the royal selection thread ongoing, but this season was very much self-contained, and maybe that was to its benefit. Many of the show's issues actually lie in Season 1. Season 2 is much better, and I hope that it continues to improve. It would be a shame if we reset back to Season 1 quality, which isn't bad by a long shot, but it doesn't reach the highs of Season 2, and Season 2 also doesn't reach as low as some of the lows in terms of writing quality that is in Season 1. I do recommend this show wholeheartedly. It would be one of my picks for showcasing to someone who's never watched anime before what the medium is capable of. Thank you all so much for watching. This is my first anime related video, and that being said, you shouldn't expect too many of these. I enjoy critiquing writing, but my forte is still in the critique of video games. Not to mention the extensive copyright coverage that needs to be in place for a show or film, especially one made in Japan. If you subscribe, you will mainly receive game reviews and the occasional streams, which I want to do more of, by the way. That isn't to say that I won't be back to reviewing anime at some point, though. If Season 3 of Re:Zero ends up being really bad, you know I'll have a very rant-heavy video on the way, for example. So sorry about the time it took for this video to come out. A mixture of holiday season taking up my time, and also me working on another video that I've made some progress on, has halted the release of this one. Sorry about that. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and follow me on Twitter. If you aren't so inclined, please sub to my Patreon. You can do so from as little as £1 a month. Thank you again. Goodbye.